All right, there's Joe. There's Doug. Isn't this nuts? I'm in actual VR with a headset, and you're on your laptop, I'm assuming.
I think I gotta jump in VR for this one.
Jerry, your avatar's spot on, man. You really worked hard on that. Well, as you can see, people are coming in. You see how we have all your kind of your greatest hits lined up around here. Oh, trying to.
Be on stage.
There's echo on me. An Athena question.
Hello. Welcome to the event. We'll be starting soon. Feel free to come in, make yourself at home.
Hey, sorry, I just stepped away from my computer for a second.
How are you today? Yeah, you might be muted.
Hello.
So
There's
it
a
says
there's
video
a really
girl.
big
So are you a video
echo.
shooter? You shoot video inside of the
Somebody-
I
metaverse?
don't know why.
No, I am a
Somebody needs to
host
mute.
today, but
Somebody's
we do
mic
have a
keeps
drone
mic
that's
who's
taking
echoing.
pictures.
I
shooting
don't
Oh,
know.
video.
okay.
It's everybody.
Uh-huh.
Everybody's
Are
echoing.
you a
So
comic
someone
book fan?
You can go to the bar and have a
can I
drink.
take a picture?
You know.
It wasn't
Oh,
me.
Oh, it's Ryan's echoing
okay.
through this.
I know somebody that should be here.
Oh.
Um, so this is comic books too, right? Anything
Okay, my Zoom.
Yes,
Okay.
there will be
Okay, hold
different events going on um, for rest of the day,
Okay.
and this
When
one
we talk
is
about
going
events, are
to
we
start
saying
soon.
like live events would be what, or speaking events? Will be
Mm.
speaking events?
Yeah, it'll be just like if you went to
Hey
like a
team, I just want
comic
to
book
connect with Harlem Film
convention,
House to let them
you
know
would
their
get to
shift is
hear from
over
the
and we'll
different
see you on
artists
3.
and other people who are connected that world.
All right.
And for this event, Gerry Duggan
Thanks so much.
is the
Hello.
creator of these comic books that you see on display here, and
Okay.
he's
We're okay
Gerry
now.
Duggan.
yeah, Duggan.
Okay. Duggan. All right.
Mhm.
I'm getting ready to
Yes.
go ask some artists right now. She
Mhm.
can probably come in. Okay. Oh, let me see. How do I leave so I'm not just like folded
Welcome
up?
to, I'm sure some of you have been here
Oh,
part of the day, but welcome to the very first FanConXR. And
Real
both
quick
Gary.
though, I need you to amplify your voice.
Ah,
So if you
okay.
look down, you'll see host tools to the left. I mean, sorry, to the right.
Okay. Yep.
If you click on host tools and then amplify my voice.
you use the trigger,
Let's see.
click on it, and that will take you back to the lobby.
How's
You
that?
got to do that as well.
Well,
Any other questions?
Fantastic. All right. So, to kind of start things off, very happy to be here with Mr. Gerry Duggan, someone who I myself met for the first time many years ago in his former life in television. Prior to moving into comics, Gerry did things a little bit in reverse of what is traditional with comics folks usually kind of going the other direction. So I will hand it over to him and let him say his hellos, and then we'll get started.
Welcome.
Thank you for coming, everybody. I really appreciate it. This is super cool to be a part of something new. And yeah, Jeremy's right. I worked in television doing live TV at G4. And the whole time I was breaking into comics at Image. Gotcha. Yeah,
Is that me? Okay.
Yeah. As Jeremy was saying, I was writing at Golden Apple, or I was working at Golden Apple. When I first came out to Los Angeles, Ryan's father, Bill, hired me for 2 weeks.
Gerry, you should be good to go. Just try to speak up a little. Or
Gotcha. Can you hear me? Yeah.
You guys are good?
Oh, good. Yeah, and so my secret origin was I was working in Golden Apple at 99 2000, and I thought I was going to need to be able to save for a car to get production work to break in. And actually, what was happening? Obviously, the world was turning. Hollywood's eyes were really turning to comics, and I had a great time at Golden Apple. It was such a big part of my early days in Los Angeles. And while I was clerking for Bill and Ryan and Kendra and Sharon and everyone, I was learning to write. I was writing scripts with a modicum of talent, I think, but I was working really hard. And I ended up being introduced to Phil Noto and Rick Remender, and so that's where some of my early Image Comics experiences came from. And for anyone that wants to break into comics, that is really it's a bit of a catch-22 in order to it's a bit of a catch-22 in order to make comics. You have to make comics. So I highly recommend you find collaborators and you make cool books. Of course, the whole time that this is going on, I'm also photographing what I'm experiencing. And so for 20 years, I've been shooting photos, and the quarantine gave me a great opportunity to finally look back at what I had been shooting all these years. I really had no time to ruminate. And obviously, I'm very privileged now. I've been writing for Marvel. It's actually, crazily enough, my 10-year anniversary at Marvel should be next month, I think. Deadpool Marvel Now, Ryan may correct me, was that 2012? I think it was. Anyway, someone may know better than I. I think we were the first Marvel Now book to launch. And
November, yep.
Yep. So November of 2012. I don't think I'm getting one of those little Mickey statues that everyone else gets, but that's par for the course, I think, for a Deadpool writer. So out of the quarantine, obviously writers were largely unaffected in terms of workflow. But a big part of my life had been devoted to travel and to Comic-Cons, and none of that was happening. So that's what I'd been doing for 20 years, was wandering the streets outside of Comic-Cons in cities that I'd never been to, shooting my friends. So a big part of the photo book is candids and portraits of comic book creators at a time when I don't know that people were really bringing out cameras, and the iPhone generation, the iPhone photos from those years were not so great. So again, very lucky in collaborators and in gigs to be able to live the life that I have, that I was able to sort of steal these moments in the photography book.
Yeah, so that's let's talk a little bit about that. So one of the things that's really interesting, you know, obviously we started in talking about kind of your journey, comic book writing, from your humble beginnings right here at Golden Apple, which looked, you know, just like it does here in virtual reality. Although the store itself does look quite a bit like, to the hard work of Ryan and the Big Rock team, does look quite a bit like the store in Hollywood. You know, you've really sort of, like, you've done everything from Marvel work, obviously. You've done creator-owned work as well at Image, and then also, as you mentioned, you know, Rick Remender, I know you did write, if I remember correctly, an issue of Fear Agent at one point in time, which I remember because I worked with Rick when that book was at Dark Horse for a time.
Oh, very cool.
Yep. So out of curiosity, so question that I'm sure you get all the time, right? This is like the quintessential panel for anyone who gets to do work at the big two and then also has their creator-owned pursuits. And looking at this now, you know, really kind of in sort of a short amount of time, if you look at the amount of time you've been writing comics versus around them and working adjacent to them in television and otherwise in retail. What do you kind of look back on as being some of the sort of the key moments in your career? And also, you know, a second question, are there any sort of aspects of that that get captured in the photo book that you're going to be putting out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, you know, the term timing and luck really obviously has, you know, it is about photography, right? So much of it is you're snapping it at the right moment. It's a collaboration between light and subject and the technical settings on the camera, but it's also very much about my story. You know, none of this would be happening if Deadpool had not come into my life. Whoever was going to sit in the Deadpool chair at that time was going to have a ride. We were working with Tony Moore, Brian and I, at a time when the movie had a lot of problems. It didn't have any traction. And we were I think we were announced, or right before we were announced, Ryan Reynolds leaked the test footage. And it became, you know, we were sitting in a chair that actually became a rocket ship. Whoever was there at that moment was going to have, you know, a great ride. So again, good timing, good luck. That's a biggie. You know, and then being asked to handle some more responsibilities at Marvel over the years led me to, at the time I was coming home from outer space, my Guardian story was wrapping up, and I knew that Jonathan Hickman had an X-Men story. That was an open secret internally and perhaps externally as well. But until I heard it in the room at the editorial retreat, I had no idea that it would be also his work would be an operating system that could power the entire line. It wasn't just a great X-Men story. It was fertile fields to be able to go and tell more mutant stories. And so, again, timing and luck conspired to put me in a place where I had no expectation of ever writing any of the Marvel mutants again after Uncanny Avengers. And what I realized was, oh, this is a real opportunity here. And I started saying, hey, you know, we're on an island. What if there are mutant pirates? And that what if became Marauders. And then the whole time I'm shooting both in editorial retreats and on streets. And, you know, so for instance, the book has Jonathan Hickman and Jordan B. White sending the last issue of Hawks and Pox off to printer. It also, at a later retreat when we had Planet Size X-Men ratified, we all agreed that this was a story that we were going to tell and that Pepe was going to draw it. After that retreat, you know, the what ifs, the writer brain never turns off. So Al Ewing, was sitting with Jonathan. They were having a drink, unwinding after the day, but not really unwinding because the what ifs are there haunting you. And Al said, well, what does that mean? You know, we're going to terraform Mars. You know, here's where I think we'll put a sword station there. So that's literally, I photographed where sword came from, and then that would beget X-Men Red. So again, I sort of describe it as Forrest Gumping through some interesting rooms, and that's more or less what I've done. You know, I've tried to be a good collaborator to folks, and they keep inviting me back, and the camera has sort of lurked and followed me around.
So out of curiosity, you know, well, a couple questions. First of all, you know, let's talk about sort of these writers' retreats and editorial meetings that happen within Marvel. I think that's something that probably for comics fans at least is probably going to be one of the most fascinating parts of your photo book, because it sort of demystifies what these kind of look like. What is sort of an average day like on one of those trips, out of curiosity?
It's a great question. For me, it's always difficult because I'm a night owl on the West Coast. So I'm sort of going to bed almost at the time on the East Coast that I would have to be waking up for the retreat. So I would fly east. It's always a treat to be back in New York. You know, that happened 3 or 4 times a year. The Marvel offices are really just offices anymore, but there are fun conference rooms. There is often some sort of Marvel memorabilia, but they're long days. You know, they basically go from 9 to lunch, and then after lunch to about 5. And, you know, we're doing a lot of story discussion during that time, but we're also discussing the you know, what's happening in the larger business, right? Like we're talking about, you know, distribution, and we're talking about like load balancing, and very much I always find it very interesting to hear sales and marketing and the business folks. And so you know, that was sort of the drier part of it. What actually happens is everyone takes a break, usually goes back to the hotel, makes any phone calls or emails they have to do. And then there's little dinners that happen, you know, like you might go to a meal with like the group of writers, artists, and editors inside of the like the editor group that you're nested in. So for instance, you know, on X-Men, it was myself and the other X-Men writers. You know, obviously COVID has disrupted that, but prior to COVID, those were super fun because the questions that came up during the day, your unconscious mind is, you know, you're having a nice meal with friends, but sometimes the answers present themselves at a you know, inconvenient moment, you know, but then you got to chase that inspiration. All of a sudden, you know, the answers to questions or problems that you maybe didn't even know you were asking come up. And there's a very famous story about Civil War. You know, it was at a time when they were actually having a very difficult retreat. Marvel, you know, this is the lore. This is what was told to me, and I believe it's true. You know, they're kind of banging their head against the wall about some story stuff, and maybe pursuing Planet Hulk, you know, is a big thing. And then Mark Miller and Brian Michael Bendis shared a cab over together in the morning, and they hatched the idea that would become Civil War. They said, hey, what about something that set these heroes against themselves? And again, you know, you're there all week working, the answers come when they come, but that, you know, was born of the frustration of maybe your day not going exactly correct. And then that last day was one of the most important probably days in Marvel editorial history, or the retreat history, you know, hashing out what will become Civil War. And, you know, obviously that's already been exploited by studios in Burbank. So you never really know exactly what's going to happen those days. We have an itinerary. I can tell you that one of the most fun retreats, I'd heard Secret Wars a few times. I think I'd heard Jonathan pitch Secret Wars twice before we actually had the quote Secret Wars retreat, when we would figure out, well, what's on Battle World? It's time now to figure it out. And then knowing that your book was going to end, but it continued something very different. You know, I had Hulk ending. I wrote 12 issues of that, and I wrote knowing that it was going to go off a cliff, and that was wonderful. You know, that was a smart Hulk worried about running around in purple pants again. You know, it was a little bit of Flowers for Algernon in the Hulk world. But the knowing that I could pitch something crazy, I said, well, let's replace Hulk with a Marvel Western that became 1872. It was just 4 issues, but it was the town of Timely, Arizona, a little nod to Marvel's publishing history. And Sheriff Steve Rogers was trying to hold the town together, and we had a very corrupt mayor in Wilson Fisk. And you know, those were the sorts of big ideas that catch fire in the room. And I had everyone throwing me ideas from every corner. It was so much so that I actually couldn't use it all, but it was all brilliant. You know, those are the fun days when you're collaborating with your writers and everyone is working together to make something better.
Yeah, and you know, speaking of fun and collaborators, you know, you're on the creator-owned side of your work. You've collaborated now multiple times with Posehn, not only obviously most notably on Deadpool, but I believe you know, some of your first Image Comics work was working with Brian, and then you worked with him again, and Scott Koblish. You know, I believe if I remember right, the marketing copy said something to the effect of reforming Voltron in Deadpool terms on a book that was just kind of a one-shot this year. You know, let's talk about the creator-owned side of the work a little bit. So the book, of course, I'm talking about with the Secret History of War on Weed, which came out, you know, earlier this year, right around 420, or I believe actually on 420.
Yeah, we dropped on 420. Yeah.
Yep. It's a happy thing when 420 falls on New Comics Day, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
And there's a big
But,
graphic right over here. If you just look to your right.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
very cool.
Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff you've done in Image. Obviously, you've got Dead Eyes, which has been a series that. How many issues are you up to in that now?
We have almost 10 done, but 5 published. So we're gonna come back to Image with we're waiting till we're all done. But we have a great second volume of that. I'm writing for John this weekend. I have a comic coming out on Halloween.
Oh wow!
That is Scott and Brian and I together. It's about the monsters that are having a very hard time in America scaring anyone anymore, because American life has gone downhill a little bit, and
right.
What they're doing and how much of a bummer the Monster Mash is this year is very fun. So we've got that, and then we've got one Christmas story to round out the trade.
Oh, that's great. That was if I'm not mistaken, that was wasn't it Last Christmas? Wasn't that the first book that you did with Posehn at Image?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We did the true sad story of Santa Claus after the apocalypse, and why he couldn't die, because there was still one boy that still believed, and so he got real drunk and decided to go there and kill the kid until he sobered up and came to his senses. Yeah, that one's a fun one, close to my heart. It ended up being the last comic book that Rick ended up drawing before he became the mayor of comics writing. And yeah, that you know, again, having done that and put in the work and, you know, doing something that you're not entitled to do, then gives you that comic to be able to hand to an editor to go, hey, I know this is a little crazy, see what you think of this. Being able then to have my second comic be Infinite Horizon with Phil Noto, that was a very different tone. It was a loose reimagining of the Odyssey in a near future sci-fi story. it was able to show, I hope, range. And then, both of those things in conjunction helped me break in at Marvel. And I hope I'm using that to feed the creator-owned. I have a book that I'm doing. I'm doing more with Scott Koblish at Image. I'm doing a book with Gary Brown at Image, and we're doing more Darkroom. Scott Bon Cristiano and I. So it's a very, I hope it's a very busy slate for me. I hope everyone enjoys it. Image has been wonderful to me through thick and thin. So they always give me, I always give them the right of first refusal on all my creator-owned material.
And out of curiosity, your work at Image started around the same time as your work at Marvel with Deadpool. Which of those things actually came first? Did one of those dominoes fall before the other, or how did that all kind of come together? Because that was sort of the beginning of your career as a comics writer, anyway.
It was early days, although there were the Image definitely preceded that by a few years. I was not able. What's funny is you'll laugh at this now, but back in the day, we were being mentioned for a Deadpool mini, probably as far back as 2008, 2009. But Marvel had just identified, they were like, unfortunately, Deadpool does not sell enough to have a mini series right now. And I was grateful that it happened the way that it happened, because when the Marvel Now, shuffling of the deck of a lot of the creative teams switching gigs, it opened up Deadpool as an ongoing job. And I was sure that we were going to be fired, because Brian and I presented a list of ideas, and him fighting zombie dead presidents was very much the idea that Marvel was supposed to laugh at and then pass on and say, okay, what else have you got? So we turned in about 5 or 6 ideas. We ended up doing most of them over the course of the run. But I really did think, I was like, well, this is going to be 6 and out for us. This is going to kill my career. Of course, we were launching with Tony Moore, one of the true modern era superstars. It was always going to be a forever comic. But I did write Doctor Strange into I believe the 2nd and 3rd issues, because I thought, well, if they fire me, Tony will have had to have drawn this before they can fire me. It will only have been the 2nd or 3rd issue. That was always one of my favorites of Doctor Strange. I've only gotten one comic book with his actual logo on it, but it's one of my favorite collaborations with Greg Smallwood. We wrote a 30-pager for Tom Brevoort, and we found out while we were in production on that comic that Mr. Ditko had passed. So it was already about life and death and living forever, and obviously took on this very special meaning for us.
Yeah, I can't think of a character that I personally have loved more my entire life than Strange, just because as a kid who superheroes were sort of the gateway into a lot of weirder shit for me growing up, and certainly Doctor Strange was kind of led me to Skull and to Creepy and to Eerie and to heavy metal and all of these other things that warped my young brain to consider a career in comics, I guess. So what's funny is, I don't know if you know this, a quick sort of aside, but back at my time at Dark Horse, there was a movie that Ryan Reynolds starred in that, to the story, according to Richardson, was to take the gig, he had to give up his role in Deadpool. And it was a movie that ended up being a tremendous flop, unfortunately, at the box office. Mainly because, I can say this now, it just really wasn't very good. It was a great premise, not a great execution. And, it was one of these things where I was actually sort of, at the time, I remember like, oh, God, you could really make a great Deadpool movie with, Ryan Reynolds doing Ryan Reynolds. But it seemed like it was never going to happen. And then, Obviously, it did happen after all, and certainly changed a lot of lives. To your point, like, you know, it was definitely you were in the right seat at the right time for that movie to hit and be what it was. So, and you did great work on that character too. You know, I got to ask, you know, that goes back to your early, you know, obviously the beginnings of your Marvel career. Do you ever think, and do you have any sort of Deadpool stories still kind of in mind that you would love to tell if given the chance?
It's funny, we really only had one story spiked at the time when we were in production on Deadpool, and I was able to revisit it at the end in Deadpool 300, my farewell, my last issue, and it was Deadpool sort of spraying himself with an alien substance. He was under the impression that it was going to make him invulnerable and able to defeat all of his enemies. What it actually did was make everyone very physically ill. And so it was a lot of sort of throw up gags, but they were all,
Yep.
It was sort of our aristocrats version of that. So like,
Right.
you know, Iron Man is shooting it out his little slit, and you know, Kamala Khan had too much dignity. She was not going to throw up in a Deadpool comic, so she inflated her cheeks to sort of catch all of the throw up. And then Giant Man showed up at the end and really threw up on Deadpool. And, you know, it was a final humiliation for Wade in our book. And it was very lovingly drawn by Scott Koblish, who, you know, are artists. You know, I do regret that you know, it's known as the Gerry Duggan or Duggan and Posehn Deadpool run, because those artists worked so hard and worked like it really does belong to them. We were telling them our story, and they were telling you that story. So you know, to the Matteo Lallis and the Tony Moores and the Mike Hawthorns and Scott Koblishes, you know, they were like, we worked real hard, the writers, don't get me wrong. Brian and I worked real hard, and so did Jordan and all of our editors, but they were at the drawing table much longer for us. And, you know, not everyone can do comedy. So when we found out the capabilities of those artists, you know, we really were cooking with gas. You know, they really made us look good.
Well, in that final issue, if I remember right, that Deadpool 300 came out right around the same time as the second film, too, didn't it? Wasn't it?
I think
like,
almost
I feel
overlapped.
like,
yeah.
yeah.
Hey.
It's funny. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say we should probably open it up soon to some questions from the folks here.
Sure.
Yeah, I wanted to ask one more question, and then let's open it up to everybody here. So just the last thing I wanted to say, you know, kind of going back to your photography for a moment. You know, you mentioned the camera always being a part of every aspect of your career, from Marvel to, you know, travel around the world, etc. Was photography a part of your life as early as comics? And was there ever a moment where you thought that would have potentially been your career versus, you know, ending up where you are today as one of the top writers in comics?
It's a great question. You know, it really was, the camera ended up in my hand because I was not a talented artist. I would have loved to have written and drawn my own comics, but I didn't have the creative bone in my body necessary to get the images down on paper the way that I saw them in my head. And I definitely am using the camera as a prosthesis to try and make cool images. You know, in theory, you'd think, well, at least it's just me and the camera, and that's true, but it remains a collaboration. I'm not collaborating with you know, artists and colorists and letterers now, though. I'm collaborating between the subject and the light. And you know, I just love it. I really do love trying to steal a moment and then seeing later what I can do with it, first in the darkroom, you know, with via analog methods, and now obviously with digital. So if there's anyone out there that's curious about my behind the scenes life in Hollywood, or my you know, behind the curtains in comic books, I certainly have a lot of candids and portraits, and obviously a lot of street photography from around the world. So check it out. I'm never going to do this again. The hardcover book was so much work. Each one's going to be signed. I hope you check it out if you get a chance. I'm kind of making a Taschen book, without being the Taschen. So it's going to be in a slipcase with a cloth bound book, and I'm very proud of it. I am sharing the images because I'm proud of it. So I do hope you get a chance to take a look at the Kickstarter. And yeah, first of all, let me thank you, Jeremy, too, for doing such a great job moderating. And I'm happy to stick around until anyone has any questions.
Yeah, let's go ahead and open it up to questions if we've got any out there. Go right ahead.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, cool. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you. Your Deadpool run is what got me back into comics after like a decade hiatus.
Oh, very cool. That's always fun to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. And it eventually led to like a job in the sort of comic book world, which was for me super fascinating. Yeah.
That's great.
But I found out about that Deadpool comic from your podcast, the Nerd Poker. Do you still play tabletop, or do you just not have time for that anymore?
The original game that Brian and I were in, it was me and Brian and Mr. Sark and Blaine Capatch and Patton Oswalt and Chris Hardwick. And that game largely broke up because, and Sarah Altman was there. We had 4 kids in rapid succession. So it was the first D&D game that was killed by life, not death, probably. But I don't have a lot of time anymore because I'm doing so many things. And now Brian and I are separated, even though we both live in Los Angeles. I'm almost in Angeles National Forest, and he's out in Encino. And it does feel like I might as well zoom in some days. But what's fun is we've put our love of that into the world, and now our sons are starting to play together. So my son just rolled up a paladin to annoy Rhodes the way that I would roll up a paladin to make Posehn annoyed. So life, the next generation literally is following in our footsteps, and so I may roll in there. But when you are as busy as I am, when you're as lucky as I am to be as busy as I am, I just don't have enough time to do all the things I want to do. I miss rolling. And congrats on finding a job in comics. That's great.
Right on. Anybody else out there?
Could always just come work at Golden Apple, and then you'll get a job in comics, right, Jer?
Yes, that is a quick. I can't be the only one. I mean, if we want to do an
Steve
alumni.
Wacker.
Yeah, Wacker, right? Who obviously went off to Marvel and was a editor. Steve was a back issue guy and parlayed that into a gig at Marvel. Or it wasn't just that, and now is the EIC of 3 Worlds, 3 Moons. Jonathan's big effort. But we can't be the only ones. I know there's other ones.
There's a few success stories. There's some current person at Boom, Megan.
Ryan, I thought you were offering Gerry to come back to Golden Apple for a job.
Oh, anytime. Open arms.
I would love to.
Come clerk at any time, Gerry.
I can stop tweeting.
All right, we have any more questions? Maybe someone wants a job at Golden Apple. You just raise your hand somehow.
Oh, there you go.
Here we go, right in the back there.
Yep.
Nat Guy 503. Maybe he had his hand up.
I just wanted a job at Golden Apple.
Oh yeah.
Got it.
See Ryan after.
Right. Yeah, we'll meet me in Golden Apple. There is a full-scale Golden Apple behind you with a portal.
I do. I can't wait to
Make
see
sure you
it.
buy him a couple drinks at the bar just
You-
for good.
You can work in Golden Apple VR. I'm hiring for that.
Anybody else? Anybody else want a job at Golden Apple? There we go. Go right
Hey,
ahead.
man.
Yeah, just another question, I guess. Just to keep things going. Are there any movies that like superhero or comic book movies that you're looking forward to seeing, or how do you feel about them in general?
Oh, it's been so much fun to see the world get comic booked as hard as we were. You know, I never dreamt that comic books needed to be anything else. I just love comics for being comics. And you know, the like from Infinity War into Endgame, and watching how people just couldn't deal with what was happening, you know, and going, wait, they're all dead. And I'm like, yeah, but it's comics. Has been fun. I'm super excited that we're getting a sequel to Constantine, a very underrated film starring Keanu. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about my own stuff that I can't talk about that might go from Image Comics to a silver screen or to a TV screen. Hoping to have some news in the next couple of months to be able to share about a couple of different things that have been simmering in the background. Everything takes forever to get going, and it also is a miracle when something not just gets made, but gets made well. It feels like that's two separate miracles. And, you know, I've been fighting the good fight for years, for 10 years now with the creator on stuff. But I'm very happy. My first love is really making comics and photography. And so if you're a fan of mine, really, you know, between X-Men and Iron Man at Marvel and the aggressive slate of Image stuff in the next year, I think you're going to have a real good time. Scott Koblish and I have a big thing that we're going to announce next month too. So very excited about that. Bless you.
Gerry.
Awesome.
Hi.
Is that a question or just a shout out?
Oh.
Hey,
Jerry's got
Gerry,
100
can you
questions.
hear me?
Hi, Kendra.
Hey, Gerry. Question, when does your Kickstarter, when is it supposed to come out?
So I'm running it. I thought I'd do most of my business at New York Comic Con. I'm going to have a QR code at the table while I'm signing. And
an event
then
we'll be announcing next week.
yeah, there'll be an event. That'll be super fun. And then I'm targeting the first quarter of 2023. I've been a part of many collaborations, but this is the first time that I've ever actually been in production on something. So I left some extra pad time. I'm hoping to fulfill in January or February, but I'm listing it as March, just in case the world continues to burn in interesting or unfortunate ways.
Haven't you learned anything in comics, Jerry? You're supposed to run late, not early.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.
So what you could do, Jerry, is like you did in your youth, you can head into Golden Apple Comics and just walk around a little bit. And maybe people come up and talk to you privately.
Yeah, that sounds
You
like
just
fun.
head right through the sign, and there's a little portal, and it'll blow your mind to like walk around in there and see.
Yeah. I want to head in. I definitely got to check that out.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to hang out in Golden Apple for a little bit, he'll be here, and then we're starting our next panel at 3 o'clock. It's an image creators panel. Speaking of image,
Awesome.
Yeah, we have Hannah Rose May, who did Rogues Gallery, Porn Sack, who did The Good Asian,
Oh,
just won
sure,
the
yeah.
Eisner Award.
Those are two wonderful creators.
Yeah, and Henry Barajas did Helm Great Castle and some other works as well. So we're gonna go check them out. Gerry and Jeremy, you guys are awesome. You are a part of history in FanConXR's first ever event, and just hang out, have some fun in VR.
Right on.
Thanks,
Thank you so
folks.
much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Thanks, Gerry. Awesome.
Cheers. Yeah, thank you.
This is
I love your Mario avatar. Look at you get out. That's awesome.
Oh,
That's so cool. Such a good
Say
idea.
Malone.
Yeah.
Very nice to meet you. I'm gonna go check out Golden Apple. Jeremy, thanks again. You did a wonderful job, and Ryan and Kendra and everyone, thank you.
Thanks, Gerry.
My pleasure. Thank you, Gerry.
And I love the room. Very well decorated for the Gerry.
This
Duggan
fun.
business. Yeah.
You should go see the other rooms.
Yeah. I'm on my way now.
Yeah, go
I'd
check them out.
I'd high five you, but my hands are tired right now.
I get it. Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Oh, wait,
Yeah,
can't
of
go over
course.
there. Okay.
Hey Don, I have to restart my computer so I can't speak to you on Discord. I mean, restart my phone so I can't speak to you on Discord right this minute. You can go ahead and jump to the next event.